Hi, I'm Laura. Welcome to Pretty Powerful Pandas, a mini-series where I'll walk you through the most useful, elegant lines of code in Pandas, whether you're just starting out or you want to level up your data game. Hi, and welcome back to Pretty Powerful Pandas. For this episode, we are reshaping with pivot and melt. And if you've ever used Excel, you probably have analysed some data using pivot. So this is the Python version of that. So we've imported pandas as PD as normal. We've gone back to our Global Superstore data, and we are looking at the order sheet. So this is what we've got. We've got over 50,000 rows and not too many, it's only 24 columns, but there is enough that we can't see them all. So I think first of all, what we want to do is just have a look at all the columns. So here we go. We've got all of this information, and it is too much just to have a look. Like, that's too hard just to look at and try and interpret or analyze. So what we're going to do is we are going to pivot it and just look at the things that we find interesting or that would be of interest. So I think sales has definitely got to be in there. Let's maybe see the category, and let's look at region as well. Okay, so to do this, we are going to do a sales pivot. And what we do is we take orders and we do dot pivot table. And then for this, we are going to, and let's have a little look at the documentation so we can see. So we've got our pivot here. So the pivot, what happens is you take your data frame, and instead of it being kind of separate columns giving you that information, you can pivot it so that you have one column is your rows, and then you can choose for another column to be your columns. And then you choose your values to be whatever you want in here. So that's what we're going to be doing. So we need index, columns and values. So we've got index, and our index is going to be region. And then we need columns, and our columns is going to be category. We're going to see kind of all the cost of these, and then our values is going to be our sales. So I think that makes sense, doesn't it? What we want to do is we want to aggregate that. So we do an aggregate function, and we're going to just sum it all together. So we're going to add it all together. Okay. I always like to see the shape, so I'm going to print my sales pivot and see what the shape is, and then we want probably just the first 5 again. So let's see what happens with that. Nice. Okay, so we've taken all of this kind of massive amount of data with too much to really interpret, and we've just pulled out exactly what we want. So we've got regions here, and then we've picked out the different types of categories. So if we look at categories, we've got technology, furniture, so it must be technology, furniture and office supplies were the 3 options within the categories. And then here our values are the sum of all the sales. So instantly very quickly we've got a lot of information that we can take to managers or executive level and say, look, here is what we've got. I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit. I'm going to round it to 2 decimal places, because then we're talking in pounds and pennies, so that kind of makes a little bit more sense. And if you wanted to, we could even do a sales pivot and sort values, and we could sort it by let's see what the biggest numbers are doing. Let's sort it by technology. So we're going to sort it by technology, and we want it to be descending. So therefore we have to say ascending equals false. And again, let's just look at the first few rows of that. There we go. So now this is something that we can, you see it's been sorted by technology. That's something you could literally take a kind of snip of and put it right into your presentation, and you could very clearly say, this is what we've got. So just like we would do in Excel, you can have lots of information and you can pivot it. So whether you want what you want to be your index, what you want your columns, and then what you want your values, and how do you want to aggregate it, and that is our pivot. And that's really useful and really obvious, so that's quite good. However, it makes it hard to then visualize, especially if we were going on to make a chart or something. So what we want to do is we want to like unpivot it, and to do that we are going to melt it. And let's just look at the definitions again. So to melt it, that's going from wide format into long format. What we need is an ID variable, so we need to say what we are having as a very kind of our ID things, our defining columns, and then after that it takes every other column and almost thinks that they're dummies almost and puts them back into a single column again with the values as an extra column. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to go backwards and we are going to melt. So let's look at a melted, and this is pd.melt. And we're going to take sales pivot and we are going to reset the index just to keep it nice and neat, because obviously we changed it slightly. And then we need our ID vars, and we're going to let that be, and you can do multiple, we're just going to keep it region from now. And I'm actually going to put a variable name, and I want to be using category. So these are going to be we're going to take these three kind of columns and flip them so they're in a single column underneath category. And our value name is going to be sales. Okay. Again, I like to print to see the shape and melted it. So let's see. Lovely. So here we've got our variable ID. This is kind of what we're defining, setting the index as. So we want region, we want to see what the regions are. And then we've taken everything from category, that was our furniture, office supplies, or technology, and we put it in a single column named category. There we go. And again, we've taken the values and we put it in a column that we've named sales. So we've got a much longer data frame here. So instead of it being kind of a wide and everything kind of mushed up and aggregated, we've kind of brought it down so it's a lot more singular. And this is really helpful when we want to do charts. So if you want to visualize your data using any charting feature, which I'm going to show you in a second, I'm actually just going to copy and paste this because we're not looking at charts today. So we're going to use a matplotlib, excuse me, and we are just going to use a little bit of a bar chart, and we've got a category, so we're using the category, and we're actually going to look at the kind of subsets between that, and we're going to make a bar chart, and that gives us this. So that's really useful. And that again could be picked up and set inside a presentation or anything you like, and again a lot more visual. So we use pivots if you want to go from kind of all your whole data, and instead of just like filtering or taking a subsection, you actually want to analyze and get a lot more information. We pivot it on the things that we want to get a real good snapshot. And executives love this. They want to know the numbers, they want to see exactly what's going on, they want to have that information and make it really easy to compare. But then we melt it back so we can actually then do better visualizations, which is much easier to do because each row is a single thing that can then be displayed. And this, it gives you all the same information, but it's just a better way to visualize it. So there we go, we have pivot and melt, and I hope this makes your data much easier to analyze. So there's your tip. Go and make your pandas pretty powerful.